Imagine you've designed a highly functional medical device. It's innovative, it's precise, and it performs exactly as intended in a clinical setting. But under the European Medical Device Regulation, EU MDR 2017/745, clinical performance alone isn't enough. In the eyes of a regulator, the innovation is secondary to the documentation that proves it. The regulation requires manufacturers to provide systematic, dativektiv evidence of both safety and performance. This proof must be gathered and analyzed using a specific, predefined methodology. Without this rigorous, documented proof, even the most advanced medical device is legally restricted from entering the European market. This is where many manufacturers encounter a barrier. They apply for CE approval based on their technical designs, only to face a formal rejection from their notified body. Rejections often stem from two specific areas: literature searches that lack a reproducible strategy, and justifications for equivalent devices that fail to meet the MDR's strict technical requirements. While these rejections happen at the end of the process, they are the direct result of how the manufacturer structured their data collection months or even years earlier. When a notified body identifies a weak literature search or a poor equivalence claim, they are pointing to a failure in the clinical evaluation plan. If the plan doesn't define these parameters correctly at the start, the final report cannot meet the legal threshold for certification. Neglecting the strategic details of the clinical evaluation at Step 1 essentially builds the entire MDR certification process on a flawed premise. The Clinical Evaluation Plan, or CEP, is the technical blueprint required by MedDev 2.7/1 Revision 4 and Annex 14. It dictates the exact methodology a manufacturer will use to validate their clinical claims. A compliant CEP must clearly define the device description, its intended purpose, and an analysis of the current clinical state of the art for that specific therapy. The document must also specify exactly where clinical data will come from, including whether the manufacturer will rely on equivalent device data or conduct new clinical investigations. For literature reviews, the CEP must establish structured keywords and strict inclusion and exclusion criteria. This ensures that the search is transparent and that any auditor can reproduce the exact same results. These elements are used to define the methods for the benefit-risk analysis. The goal is to provide a technical framework that proves the clinical benefits of the device outweigh any residual risks or adverse events. When a CEP is developed with this level of technical detail, it addresses the specific criteria notified bodies use during their review, resolving potential objections before the audit begins. The CEP is not a static document that is archived once a certificate is issued. It is the starting point for a continuous evaluation lifecycle. This diagram shows the relationship. The CEP provides the structural framework for the clinical evaluation report, which summarizes the actual clinical evidence gathered. The CER then determines the requirements for ongoing post-market surveillance and mandatory post-market clinical follow-up. This creates a data loop where real-world findings from clinical use are fed back into the CEP. This ensures the risk-benefit profile remains accurate as more patient data becomes available. This cycle ensures that clinical evaluation remains an active process, keeping the device documentation aligned with MDR requirements for the entire time the product is on the market. Executing this correctly requires total traceability. Every clinical claim in the CEP must align perfectly with the technical specifications in the risk management files. Managing these search strategies, these database definitions, and lifecycle updates simultaneously represents a significant scientific and administrative workload. To avoid delays that can stall market entry for months, manufacturers must begin their CEP development early in the product lifecycle. Navigating this degree of technical complexity without specialized regulatory experience can leave a manufacturer vulnerable to repeated submission failures. Because the cost of market delays and the risk of certification rejection are so high, many manufacturers partner with specialized consultants. I3C Global provides expert MDR consulting and clinical writing services, helping manufacturers develop the documentation needed to meet notified body expectations. They offer support for technical documentation and clinical evaluation for all device classes under EU MDR 2017/745. Don't allow a technical oversight in your clinical evaluation plan to jeopardize your product's path to market. Partner with I3C Global to build a technically sound regulatory strategy and secure your CE approval with confidence.